reshape and redefine the educational system of this nation. In the reshaping and the redefining of our educational system through Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, according to Michael Eric Dyson, Brown versus Board of Education was deemed in the moral vision of Dr. King as it pertains to the national goals set forth in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, which helps to regulate American ideals about issues such as freedom, justice, and equality. Dr. King once said, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall in. This was the promise that all men, yes, black men and white men, and I will also add Asian men and women, Hispanic men and women, Native American men and women, gay men and women, will be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A reality in America is through a strong, equitable public education system. Moreover, 60 years later, there are some signs and some indicators that a reversal is on the horizon. This nation has taken a giant step backwards concerning equality and just education. We stand here 60 years later, knowing that the children in Kansas and Missouri and across this nation are still suffering and experiencing a separate but unequal education. Not just to remember the victory of Brown versus Board of Education, but we're here because a moral issue is at stake. The moral issue at hand is the education, or may I say in some respects, the miseducation of our children. Moral issues concerning separate and equal is nothing new in American history. In the year 1896, just 118 years ago, we faced a moral issue in this nation called Plessy versus Ferguson, which upheld the doctrine of separate but equal. In a nation that is rooted in the twin injustices of racism and poverty, separate and equal was never and never shall be a reality. Segregated education was and still is unconstitutional because it is inherently unequal. The separate and unequal education that is pervasive across the nation is an issue of racism and poverty, which can be tracked by zip codes. These children are not living poor by choice. Rather, they're living poor because they are compelled to live poor. Poor children or children living in the wrong zip code usually attend the poorest schools, which have fewer financial and material resources and have the most difficulty hiring and keeping the most skilled teachers and administrators. These major disparities between schools that are made up of predominantly poor children and schools that are made up of affluent families with higher incomes are exactly what Jonathan Coates calls savage inequalities. The savage inequalities living in the wrong zip code is immoral, is unjust, it destroys the dignity and the self-esteem of those who are its victims. Not only that, but these actions, when we look at them, are sin, because they are destroying the lives, the hopes, and the aspiration of our people. The zip code, nor the social economic location of a child and their parents should not be the determining factor in the quality education of any American child. Whenever we have an educational system that is separate and unequal, it is an assault on the American children. This assault is not only against our children, this assault is against Brown. It is an attempt to turn back the hands of time. This assault against Brown is an attempt to resegregate our schools. The impact of Brown versus Board of Ed was not only an elementary and secondary education issue, but it had a huge impact in opening the doors for post-secondary education for African Americans to enter into majority universities. The Brown decision has been so impactful in America that it was a witness of justice, equality, and human dignity that was extended to what was considered the least of these. Therefore, we have to continue to fight for public education. For if public education fails, those who pay the highest price for the miseducation are those who are the least to blame and arguably have the most to lose. Still, some good news. There's good news found in our ancient scripture. For Jesus said in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and the recovering of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that abuse." Jesus is using or giving us an emancipation from poverty by preaching the good news to the poor. The emancipation from poverty in the 21st century for most Americans is a strong public education system.
Yeah.
A system that will deliver our children's families and future generations to come from being held captive by illiteracy and the recovering of sight to the blind, so that education will no longer remain blind and that those will have a vision for a brighter future. And because the captives are blind, they have been set free and have sight, Martin Luther King Jr. was able to have a dream. He had a dream that one day his father, the children, would grow up in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character. Dr. King's dream is not yet complete, but you see, I have a dream. And I believe that every true educator in America has a dream as well. And I believe our dream is one day, black children, white children, brown children, Hispanic children, Asian children, Native American children. It matters not if they're urban, suburban, from the foothills, from the plains, that they will receive a public education that's not based on the zip code in which they live. Rather than each child can cash in on that promissory note. That promissory note that guarantees American children a world-class education from a world-class nation. I want you to know that I had a conversation with Dr. John Martin last week, and he made the statement about teaching being the first profession. That's a part of my dream. And that is that the teaching profession will be lifted up once again for what it is, the first profession.
Yeah.
The reason it is the first profession because before there was a doctor, there was a teacher. Before there was a dentist, there was a teacher.
Yep.
Before there was an engineer, there was a teacher. Before there was an attorney,
There was a teacher.
before there was a judge,
There was a teacher.
before there was a senator,
There was a teacher.
before there was a congressman,
There was a teacher.
every time a governor, every time a senator gets a bill across their desk that would do anything to destroy teacher tenure, that would do anything to eradicate the due process of teachers, that would do anything to make